Story time about how I'm hooking up with my boss's husband. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sending me on Instagram. Let's get this out of the way. Yes, I'm a homewrecker. Am I proud of it? No, but just hear me out. A few years ago, I had moved to a new city and didn't have any friends at all. My goal was to get a job and make some new friends. Luckily, I got a job right away. After working there for a few weeks, I noticed that my boss would get really jealous anytime her husband would come into the store. Here's the reason why. Her husband is super attractive. He's like way more attractive than she is. Anyway, there were a bunch of girls that worked at the store. I wasn't the only one, but it was like some kind of unspoken rule that you never spoke to the boss's husband. After a month of working there, I would avoid him at all cost. But here's the thing, he actually would go out of his way to come say hi to me. At first I thought this was flattering, but then I realized I could be playing with fire. So I decided to be really cold towards him. Well, this didn't work because it actually made him want to talk to me even more. A few days later, I get a text from an unknown number. Can you guess who it is? Yep, it's my boss's husband. In the message, he basically said that if he had done anything wrong to let him know because he didn't want me to feel uncomfortable around him. That's when I told him that none of the girls at the store were allowed to talk to him or even make eye contact with him. And that was the reason why I didn't speak to him. He told me that I must have misunderstood because he's friends with all of the girls who work there, which I knew was not true. The next day I go into work and he actually shows up at lunchtime. I was by myself at the store. It's like he almost knew that I was there by myself, so he decided to come over. And he started flirting. He pretty much complimented everything about me and asked me if I was making friends. Then he asked me for permission to follow me on Instagram. Of course, I was like, yeah, you can follow me. After that, we basically talked on Instagram almost every single day. He would watch and reply to all of my stories. One time I posted a story of me having dinner with some guy, and he replied right away and asked me if I was on a date. I said yes. Then he told me that he was actually jealous. I didn't know how to reply, so I just said LOL. Then he said, what are we gonna do about this? I told him probably nothing because his wife would get upset. Then he said, I've got my ways, don't worry. He asked me to go to the movies and we went, and we basically made out the entire time. After the movie, we sat in his car and he told me that he hated his wife and that he was planning on divorcing her. He was even crying. I mean, I had to believe him. He asked me to keep everything secret, and of course I said yes. I mean, I didn't want to lose my job. This went on for 2 months. One day he calls me and tells me that his wife actually read our messages. Part 2 is my boss's husband, aka the guy I'm having an affair with. He calls me up to tell me that she actually saw the text messages between us. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. Luckily, he did not save my number under my name. So basically, she saw messages between him and some other girl. He was really freaking out. But that's when I told him this is your way out. According to him, he hated his wife. So I told him this is perfect, just ask her for a divorce. That's when he told me there was no way he would ever divorce her. He told me that she was the only one who made money in the relationship and that if they ever got divorced, she would leave him nothing. He also told me that he was no longer attracted to her, but that the money was just too good and he had to stay in the relationship. At that point, I started feeling really bad. I was under the impression that he absolutely hated her and that she was terrible towards him, but apparently not. Thankfully, she didn't know it was me the one that was messaging him. He actually made up a lie and told her it was some girl from Instagram that he met. When I showed up to work later that day, my boss was in a really bad mood, and I knew why. Suddenly, she tells all of us girls to pull out our phones and open our text messages. My stomach dropped because stupid me had not deleted all the messages. She started going one by one checking everyone's phone. But luckily, I was able to delete everything by the time she got to mine. That's when she told us all to go home. As soon as I got in my car, I decided to call him. I told him what had happened and he told me that everything should be under control and that she believes what he said. He asked me if we could meet up and I said yes. I just couldn't resist the temptation. A few days later, I came into work early by mistake. I find him talking to one of the other girls. When he saw me, he literally backed away from her. I instantly got upset and realized that he had probably been having affairs with a bunch of the other girls. I decided to confront the girl that he was talking to and she told me the truth. They had been having an affair for a year now and that he had probably had affairs with all the girls that worked there. No wonder my boss was so paranoid. When I asked him about it, he totally denied it. I kind of want to tell my boss now and just confess everything, but I'd risk losing my job, which pays really well and I actually love. I'm hoping you guys can tell me what to do. Help me. Crazy story time about how my husband tried to unalive me and my lover when he caught us cheating. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. By the way, I'm at the airport again. I don't know how I always end up at the airport trying to do voiceover, so sorry if it sounds weird. My husband and I have been together for 10 years, but we were best friends before we ever decided to get into a relationship. One thing about me is that I've never been able to stay loyal in a relationship. And because my husband was my friend before, he knew that. It was a running joke in our friend group that I was never going to be able to stay loyal to one man. Eventually, when my husband and I got married, he totally never thought that I would be able to do that to him. I mean, I never thought I was going to be able to cheat on him, but there I go. Fast forward to 4 months ago. I work in the fashion industry and I'm constantly in contact with lots of models and good looking people. So this cute guy comes into my office and he's a model and he started flirting with me right away. I mean, he was actually pretty much flirting with every woman in the office, but I was like, oh my god, he's so cute. I had 3 options. I could ignore the flirting, or I could flirt back, or I could flirt back and give him my number. I went with option C. I gave him my number and he texted me later that day asking if I wanted to go to dinner. I said yes. So I told my husband that I was going to be staying at the office late, which I did all the time anyway, and he trusted me. After that dinner, this guy and I were totally inseparable. We would meet up for lunch every single day and hang out for a few hours after I finished work, or sometimes I would get off work early to go hang out with him. I told this guy I was going through a separation and that's why I couldn't stay over at his place. And he believed me. By the way, I'm using the shade Verano for my Tanya collection with Aunat. If you guys want to shop it, it's the link in my bio. My husband travels for work a lot and this was my saving grace. Whenever my husband would go out on trips, I'd invite my boyfriend to stay over at my house. While on one of those trips, my husband came home early and didn't bother to tell me. Apparently, he already had his suspicions and wanted to catch me in a lie. He catches me and my lover in the act. My husband went psycho, you guys. He grabbed his gun and held us at gunpoint for 4 hours. Part 2 is up. 2 of how my husband tried to unalive me and my lover when he caught us cheating. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was said to be on Instagram. When my husband catches us in the act, he pulls out his gun and holds us at gunpoint for 4 hours. The entire time, he was trashing our bedroom. My boyfriend, aka the model I was cheating on him with, basically cried the entire time and didn't say a word. While me, on the other hand, was trying to explain to my husband that he knew that I was like this. Well, that just made him angrier. Eventually, I told him that I would give him a divorce if he wanted one. And that's when my husband told me that he was never going to divorce me and that I was going to stay loyal to him for the rest of my life. And I promised him that I would. Finally, after 4 hours, he made me promise never to see this guy again, which I agreed to. The guy told me that he would never want to see me again and that he didn't want any trouble. He also told my husband that he was a victim in this whole thing and that I lied to him about being in a relationship, which is kind of true. So then my husband got even angrier. My boyfriend ran out of the house and promised not to call the police. That's when my husband told me that he already knew about the relationship and that he had been spying on me with him this whole time. When I asked him how he'd been spying, he didn't want to tell me. This led me to believe that he probably has cameras around our house and that he probably put some spyware stuff in my phone so he knows exactly what I'm doing on it. Then he told me that from now on I was to never take the pill again and that he wanted me to get pregnant as soon as possible. My career is super important to me and he knows that I don't want to have kids just yet. But now he's basically forcing me into having children. I told him we should really consider getting a divorce or at least going to couples counseling and he doesn't want to. I know I shouldn't have cheated on him, but at the same time I'm being forced into staying in this relationship and I'm being forced into getting pregnant. He's even dropping me off at work and picking me up. I feel like he's always watching me and I don't know what to do. I also feel bad because I broke his heart and I know he's hurting, but he's totally going about this the wrong way. I know you guys are going to have some advice on what I should do, so please comment. My best friend thinks I should just go file for divorce during my lunch break, but I don't know. I feel like it's just going to make him kill me. What should I do?
Story time about how my lying, cheating husband moved his mistress into our home. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My husband is a classic narcissist. He's a total love bomber, lies, and gaslights. We met through some friends at a party, and the day that we met, he totally love bombed me. He told me I was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen, that he wanted to marry me, and that we should have kids. Unfortunately, I believed everything he said. On our second day, he told me that he loved me. And when I didn't tell him that I loved him back, he got really upset and told me that we shouldn't see each other anymore. A few weeks passed, but I couldn't stop thinking about him, so I reached out. Worst mistake of my life. At the time, I didn't realize how wealthy he was. But boy, did he start letting me know. He would flaunt that he was super rich and even invited me on a trip, which he paid for. We ended up going to the Bahamas and it was magical. Of course, I started falling in love with him. The last day of the trip, he actually asked me to marry him and I said yes. My whole family thought it was absolutely crazy of me because I only knew him for about 2 weeks. When we got back home, I moved into his beautiful house. You see, I was in a really bad situation. I had a part-time job, no savings, and basically no future. At least that's what he said. So when I moved in, he insisted that I quit my job and basically tend to the house, which I did. So I had no money of my own. This was around the time that he would start gaslighting me. Whenever we got into fights, he would call me names and just threaten me. And when I would bring it up later on, he would totally deny that he ever said anything like that. When we started planning the wedding, things calmed down. He was always at work and I was always at home. We finally got married and went on our honeymoon to Italy. And that's when he started changing even more. He would shame me whenever I tried to post a cute picture of myself on Instagram. And he basically convinced me that I was trying to get attention from other guys, so I stopped posting. Our third night in Italy, he got drunk and we got into a really big fight. I decided to leave the hotel, but when I came back a few hours later, he had a random girl in his room and told me to leave. I couldn't believe his behavior. After about 20 minutes, he let me back into the room and told the girl to leave. That's when I told him I was going to go back home and that I made a huge mistake by marrying him. He apologized and started crying. He said nothing happened to her and part of me just wanted to believe him so desperately, so I did. When we got back home, he was on his best behavior. Until one day he told me he wanted to hire a live-in cleaning lady. Little did I know it was his mistress. Part 2 is up.